So today we're continuing, first thing first, one thing at a time. And we're doing the steps and the traditions. And today we're finishing up tradition 4 about autonomy. What the step actually says is each group should be autonomous except in matters affecting other groups or fill in the blank as a whole. And so if we reframe that to every individual, every church, every belief system, every center for spiritual living, every group gets to be autonomous except in matters affecting one another or creation as a whole. It kind of begins to address this whole idea of separation, does it not? Right? Because too many times we interpret autonomy as separation. I mean, how many times have you heard somebody say, well, I'm only hurting myself, right? I'm not hurting anybody else. In one, how is that possible? I invite you to have that conversation with your toe in the middle of the night when it finds a piece of furniture. Right? When every cell in your body is reacting, I invite you to look at your toe and go, I didn't hurt you. Right? Imagine a conversation between your couch and your toe. Okay? And the couch going, I don't know what you're upset about. I didn't do anything to you. It's the relationship. If you look at the history of New Thought, written by Horatio Willis-Dresser in 1919, he says this: we now see that all true peace must be social. We now see that all justice must be social. We ponder over this as greatly as we have anything else. 1990. We're still trying to figure out social justice. And there are lots of people in the New Thought movement who think we have no role in social justice. Okay? Like, how's that possible? Okay? But here's what happens. We sometimes teach science of mind from the same perspective of rugged individualism, of this idea of autonomy as separate. Even to the point where we create our own little version of metaphysical guilt and shame of that. What's in your consciousness that created that? I offer you this. If anyone ever says that profoundly ignorant comment to you, I offer you this response. Well, since there's only one consciousness and we're all using it, I'm interested in what you're thinking that's contributing to my problem. It's a fair response. There's only one consciousness, we're all using it, so we're all impacting one another. There's a difference between intention and impact. There's a difference. Right? This whole idea of tragedy. Who's defining tragedy? And does our definition of tragedy change as our experience of the event that we have deemed tragic changes? I will tell you, the one that came to mind during the meditation was the death of my son. When I experienced that, I experienced it as a full-on tragedy. 42 years of age. That was tragic to me. It was tragic to me that I no longer could pick up the phone and call and talk to my son. over the years, it has become way less tragic. Because when I put the whole picture together, he was a young man that never could find a way to heal his very broken heart. When they found him dead, the only thing in his bedroom was a copy of Hitler's Mein Kampf on his nightstand. That is not the kid I know. But that is the kid that was looking for a savior in another human being. Is that the tragedy? Is that more tragic than his death? I don't know anymore. What I know is that as a parent, there's a part of me that is really grateful he's not here in form having to navigate what's going on. There's a part of me that is grateful that he's not here in form so I don't have to navigate how he's navigating what's going on. Let's tell the truth. Does he have every right to do whatever he did? Yes. He's autonomous. But we have to realize, we don't have to, that's a lie. We don't have to. I got tons of evidence that proves we don't have to. We get to. We get to acknowledge that every thought we have, every action we take, impacts the whole of creation in some way. And perhaps if we let go of trying to have a positive impact, we would have a more authentic, a more autonomous impact. Because here's the problem with trying to do it right. That's based in avoiding wrong. I'm trying to do something right because otherwise I'm going to do something wrong. And if I do something wrong, it's going to be a tragedy. And then I'm going to feel bad. Then I'm going to withdraw. And now I'm no longer even functioning in society. But give me a minute and I'll blame society somehow for making all that happen. Because we are socialized on the villain, victim, hero triangle. Generationally, we are socialized to that triangle. How about we practice the autonomy of getting off the triangle? I don't know if I'll get the quote exactly right. Toni Morrison says, if you want to fly, you got to let go of the shit that's holding you down. Are we willing to do that? Are we willing to be autonomous in letting go of the shit that is keeping us from flying? Are we willing to let go of the habit of blaming? I was laughing with another minister yesterday? No, Friday. That I could stand up here and use the F-bomb, every other word, and be more accepted than if I use the A word and the R word. Accountability and responsibility. See, my people's faces went, ooh. We don't want to talk about being accountable. We don't talk about being responsible. How do we see God in tragedy? You respond instead of react. Viktor Frankl reminds us that there's a space. Take a breath. There's a space between cause and effect. And that's where our power of choice lies. In that space. And depending on how we choose and what we choose depends on our happiness. And if we're choosing from, not with, not into, but from a consciousness of autonomy that is connected, not separate, we choose differently. when I choose from a perspective that every choice I make impacts you, I will choose differently. Because I'm taking responsibility. Responsibility doesn't mean it's my fault. Responsibility means the essence of me gives me the ability to respond above the conditioned thinking that makes me react. How are we using our authenticity? Are we pausing to even consider how might this impact the whole of creation? Doesn't mean you'll change your choice, but just the energy of doing that will change you. I caught enough of Pope Francis's funeral that it moved me to sit with the question, how would I change? Not how would my life change? Not how would situations change? How would I fundamentally change if the only question I ever ask is, how can I serve you? And I'm still sitting with that. And what's interesting is the arguments that it ignites in my little human brain. Right? Well, what about this? And what about this? And part of the conversation is, yeah, what about that? It assumes that I will lose a lot if I just serve. And then I think about life, consciousness itself, creation. It doesn't even ask, how can I serve? It just does it. It just serves. And it's given every expression of itself, called us, the power to choose how it serves. That's our autonomy. Do you get that? Whatever this is, and I say that very reverently because it is beyond a name. Right? Whatever it is, creates out of itself and then lets go, gives itself, its creation, its animations of itself. We don't even have adequate words to talk about it, but it gives it complete autonomy to use it. And it just says, okay, yes, 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 yes. And that's how we get to run amok. Because there's nothing in creation that stops us. That's how tragedy even comes to be. But if I respond to tragedy with more tragedy, what do we get? More tragedy. Right? I don't really care what the government administration does about diversity, equity, and inclusion. I don't care. Because those of us that are committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion can just get louder. I don't need your grant money. I don't need your program to live the principles of equity. I don't need anybody's approval for that. The tragedy would be if I cop a resentment and go, oh, no, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not a government entity. Your policy doesn't police me. I went to Urban Reed's bookstore in Baltimore yesterday. Oh my God, it was just fabulous. It was, because those of you who know me, y'all know I grew up in the hood, and I'm just sitting in there, and all this blackness. And I was like, oh my God, I'm home. I'm home. Okay? We celebrate that. we talk about it so that it gets normalized. We stop making LGBTQIA plus communities invisible because visibility equals legitimacy. That's why it's important to be verbal. It is. Okay? So I'm a transgender man. What are you going to do to me? I don't know. Depends on who you talk to. There's rumors that they're trying to get rid of my health care. All right. Kaiser says they're still going to cover no matter what you do. So go ahead. There's rumors that they're trying to go through the Social Security records so they can bring us all up on fraud charges for changing our gender flag. Really? Now here's the thing. That might be the thought of one rogue person and they said it out loud. But I am just not going to get on board with trying to prevent something that ridiculous. If it happens, okay, I'll find God in the tragedy. And I'll have a conversation with God in the tragedy. And whatever body God's in that moment. Because every conversation we have is a conversation with God. Do you get that? Are you having it in tragedy? Or are you having it in autonomy? Are you listening to change that person? Or are you listening to them? Because if you're listening to change them, you're not honoring their autonomy. And you've lost sight of what yours means. Autonomy is not superiority. It's not. Autonomy just means you get to do you. And I get to do me. And they get to do them. And if we would all honor that, how would the whole of society change? If we listened to understand, if we spoke to be authentically understood, not to convince anybody, but to communicate authentically who we are, what would change in your life? Do you love who you are enough to authentically speak it, to authentically live it, without worrying what somebody else thinks about you? There's a whole, it appears to be a conversation on the minister's listserv about our organization and social justice and what we should and should not be doing. And what's really interesting is the person that actually initiated that didn't ask any of that. They asked two questions. How are you responding? How are you leading? But there are email after email after email about what Centers for Spiritual Living should be doing, about what Ernest Holmes did, and about the tragic future that we're headed to. And I'm like, I really need to hurry up and finish my book. Just answer the damn question. Because that is not what was asked. But it's very telling that that's where our mentality is. Organizationally, we are just as divided as society. Surprise, surprise. This teaching, just like the 12 steps, just like anything else, is useless unless we use it. Right? You can have a whole vehicle full of spare tires, but if one goes flat and you don't stop and change it, those spare tires, useless. Right? They're absolutely no good unless you stop, take off the flat, put on the spare. And so I'm going to wrap up with this analogy. If you're not finding God in the tragedy, look deeper. And only look in one place.
mirror. Stop looking for your answers in someone else. If you have a Science of Mind book, go to page 270. Because he's very clear. Right? The establishment of what is right or wrong cannot be found in another person, but only in assessing, does what I do, does what I want to do bring more joy, more peace, more happiness to myself, and at the same time harm no one? If it does, it is right, it is not selfish. If it doesn't, it is a misuse of law. Are you misusing law and calling it spirituality? I don't know, but you do. And it doesn't matter if you lie to me. That's why your only work is in the mirror. Get right. Look yourself in the eye. Don't look past yourself. You look in the mirror and how you have a tendency to look past yourself and look around yourself. I dare you to look yourself eye to eye and ask yourself, am I showing up authentically? Where am I lying to myself and blaming someone else? Where am I claiming autonomy and not giving a rat's rear end how it affects anybody else? That's not autonomy, that's separation. And if you claim this teaching, duality doesn't fit. So one of those things ain't true. Either you can't have, there's only one, and have an accept. You just can't. You just can't. You are autonomous. You already are. Except in matters affecting creation as a whole. So it's really about understanding how you're using your autonomy. You get to choose, but there's no spot where you do that without impacting the whole. Let's take this into prayer. There really is only one. And I recognize that one as the source, the substance, the energy of life itself. Indefinable, unchangeable, unnameable, expressing itself in exquisitely individualized expressions of itself. No two alike. And empowering every expression of itself with the power of itself to choose to move consciousness into expression. I am that in form. And what is true of me is true of all creation. True of everyone within the sound of my voice and beyond. Each a glorious, amazing, on purpose, one of a kind, never to be repeated, divine idea, a divine desire of creation to know itself as each one. Wow. And so I claim and affirm that is the autonomy that we are each living into, an awakening of the magnificence of each individualized divine expression. That there is a claiming of that there is an ownership of that. in the context of one. That there's an ownership of impact. And that choosing becomes a wholly intentional process of love. And knowing that the word speaking through me is creation speaking itself into being, I know that it's already done. I know that the doer of creation, the activity of law, has already made it so I can let go. And I can remind the human part of my brain, there's nothing for me to do to make it happen, but rather to live within it as it happens. And so I let go. I say yes to life. And so it is.